Station gang, and welcome back to another episode of Surrounded by Short Boxes with your boy Stu from Dr. Doom's Fan Club. This show is, of course, a spotlight on some of my favorite back issues from the personal collection and what I love about them so much. Today we are talking about a gorgeous, retro-styled love letter to the golden and silver age of comics with Darwyn Cooke's Magnum Opus, New Frontier. I'm going with issue 2 and putting that bad boy under the microscope today. So difficult to choose just one issue from this 6-issue series, but this one has more than a few of my favorite moments, both artistically and story-wise, as Cook both wrote and beautifully illustrated this classic. Let's take a look inside at what makes this issue and this series so special to me. To sum this book up, in Cook's own words, New Frontier, quote, can be seen as a love letter to a bygone era or an allegorical reflection of contemporary concerns. A big shoot 'em up with giant monsters, or a character-driven historical melodrama. The choice, as always, should belong with the reader. In this gorgeous epic, we find ourselves in the 1950s. It's a post-World War II, ElseWorld-style America, where superheroes have been outlawed. And the beloved icons who still do fight on, like Superman and Wonder Woman, do so under the direction of hidden government agendas on unsanctioned missions and are operating with dueling ideologies. New Frontier curates a universe and a timeline that blends real-life events from American history with legendary moments from DC's canon, like the creation of Sputnik in 1956, directly followed by Barry Allen getting his powers as Flash in 1957, which we see happening on back-to-back panels here in issue 2. Winding and weaving our way through this decade, we find ourselves at a crossroads of sorts for the capes and cows of both past and present. One of the first times we meet a superhero in costume in this book, it's Our Man as he falls to his death, along with 4 police officers as he's trying to avoid arrest. The heroes of old have been disgraced and shamed, marked as subversives and un-American, and they're trying to reckon with a legacy gone sour as the heroes of today are trying to find their way and make a difference in a world that's not even sure if it wants them around anymore. New Frontier's conclusion comes at the start of the 1960s, its ending being the beginning of the Justice League of America. So as the team forms to fight together for the first time in The Brave and the Bold, number 28 from March 1960, when they battle Starro the Conqueror. It's inspired by that same sense of optimistic American determinism that was prevalent at the beginning of the 1960s. And the namesake for the book comes from John F. Kennedy's speech at the 1960 Democratic National Convention, where, full of hopeful verve for the future, he would accept the presidential nomination.
The world is changing. The old era is ending. The old ways will not do. The new frontier is here, whether we seek it or not.
This era, so much like the times of today, was a turbulent time in American history. And one of the things I love most about this book is how it takes America's trauma and turmoil and reflects and refracts that through the prism of its heroes. For example, we see the KKK and the lens of racism through John Henry. We see the scourge of the Red Scare and McCarthyism paralyze the nation with fear and paranoia through the disgraced members of the Justice Society. We see America's military-industrial complex and its hypocritical foreign policy examined through Wonder Woman's relationship with the government, which we're going to get to shortly. We see the horrors of war, the haunting effects of PTSD, and former Air Force pilot Hal Jordan and what he had to do over there to survive. We see the end of an era and the changing of the guard through the Wildcat Ted Grant, and we learn what it means to be an American in the 1950s from a Martian named John Jones, who's a bit of a cultural shapeshifter in this issue. So Cook's able to walk this thematic tightrope between past and present and seamlessly blends together DC worlds and characters both new and old, and gives us a book that's brimming with heart and hope and has so much amazing art and plenty of food for thought along the way. All right, enough. Let's get into this issue. First off, Cook went ham on both the front and the back covers of every single issue of this series, giving us these beautiful works of art on the cover, and then these on the back we have these great poster-ready pinups of our featured heroes across all 6 issues. We open this issue with the fourth chapter of our story. It's entitled Gods and Monsters. It's 1955, and we are at the Gotham City Observatory, where Dr. Saul Erdel is dying from a heart attack due to his shock and sudden surprise at the appearance of the Martian John Jones. Erdel was trying to make contact with alien radio signals in space. Instead, he accidentally teleported John to Gotham, and he finds himself apologizing to the Martian for stranding him on Earth in his last dying breaths. He has so much he wants to tell John, but for his final words, he chooses caution, warning him about humanity, urging him not to reveal himself, saying, quote, "This world isn't ready for you. Mankind is a suspicious, violent creature," end quote. After the good doctor unfortunately passes away, we get this beautiful full-page shot of John in his massive, mysterious alien form, standing in an observatory, half hunched over the doctor in partial darkness, with a caring hand still on his chest. These brilliant pin-up poster-style moments from Cooke throughout the book is one of the things that really endears it to me. We get several of those in every issue, and they're always stunning. From here, we move on to one of my favorite sequences in the issue and the series as a whole, this philosophical disagreement between Wonder Woman and Superman. These two are both in Indochina, lending a hand in a war they're not supposed to be involved in when it comes to Vietnam, all under the auspices of a humanitarian aid mission. So Superman comes across a horrific massacre, discovering dozens of slaughtered rebel soldiers. He follows the raucous sound of laughter and drinking to a hut where he finds Wonder Woman celebrating with a group of armed women. We learn that Diana hasn't reported in for 2 weeks, and Clark has been sent by his superiors in the U.S. government to track her down.
You're an errand boy, sent by grocery clerks to collect a bill.
Wonder Woman explains to him the situation. She was originally sent to Cambodia to retrieve a downed C-47 transport plane that had an American crew. This was an effort by the powers that be to scrub any evidence of U.S. military involvement in Vietnam. On the way to Laos, Diana takes notice of a rebel camp on the riverbank with women and being held in tiger cages. She returns that night, disarms the soldiers, and frees the women from their cages. However, she learns that these rebels have killed every man and child in this village, subsequently raped and tortured these women since they became prisoners. So Diana places all the weapons in a clearing and allows these women the opportunity to exact their own brand of justice upon their captors. And these women waste no time getting to click-clacking, killing every last rebel. This account of events by Diana horrifies Superman, right? And it's here that we see how big the gulf of difference is between these two and their ideologies has become. The Man of Steel angrily chastises Diana, saying they're supposed to be setting an example, not celebrating cold-blooded murder. But Diana argues that she's allowed these women to reclaim both their home and their dignity, and that, she rebukes Soups in saying that a quote, a smile and a box of flags, end quote, is poor recompense for losing everything and everyone you loved. From here, Wonder Woman doubles down on her point, asserting that by giving these women freedom and an opportunity at justice, she merely introduced them to the American way. And Clark's not really ready for that. He informs her he's going to have to report what she did as a strict violation of the protocol, and she points out that there's no rules in war, only, quote, suffering and madness. And she tells Superman to hit the road with a brilliant send-off. There's the door, spaceman. I love that. Besides the power struggle going on between their personal philosophies here, I really adore this sequence artistically for all the little things that Cooke does to give this conversation extra depth through detail. When it comes to Diana, never once during this back and forth is she presented as even slightly submissive to Clark, or shorter or smaller than him physically in any respect. When Superman first enters the hut, she's all boisterous victory atop the table, and then I love how she squats down on her haunches as he approaches, almost as if he's like a confused, lost child, and she's the assuring, knowing adult. Her face is all sarcastic confidence as she tells him that she's, quote, over here winning the hearts and minds of the disenfranchised. This is a glorious little tongue-in-cheek reference to a phrase and a philosophy that was used ad nauseum by coalition forces during the wars in both Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as the hokey photo caption for Clark Kent's own Daily Planet article about Wonder Woman's exploits in Indochina. Just a wonderful send up there. When Superman gets obsessed with Diana following her account of this violent liberation she helped to enact, she's simply unbothered, sipping from her goblet, still crouched atop the table. And he gets a little bit shaken when she accosts him about the true nature of the American way. And when she finally does get down off the table and stands up to him, we see that she's much taller and still more physically imposing than he is, as she tells him to hit the bricks. Also, these constant deadpan expressions and the overall unimpressed aura coming off of this group of female survivors is a delight every time I get to see it. So anyway, let's keep it moving. We got another great sequence just a page turn away. Back in Gotham, John Jones has learned that Dr. Ertl's device unfortunately cannot return him to Mars. So he's been living in Gotham quietly under the guise of the deceased doctor, learning and soaking up all he can about humans, American society, everything in between from the best source of info available, television. And so in two fantastic back-to-back pages here, during his nightly television viewing, he acts as a shapeshifter when he goes from his Martian form first into Groucho Marx as he's watching TV, then into Bugs Bunny, and then into a Native American chief before finally setting on the hard-boiled noir detective, and he takes the surname of John Jones. We flash forward to 2 years later in Gotham, 1957. John Jones has quickly risen to rank of detective in the GCPD with his integrity, his cunning analytic skill, and of course his telepathy, right? And a great example here by Cooke of blending Silver Age and Golden Age characters together. His partner is none other than DC's very first detective hero, Slam Bradley. Now, Slam debuted way back in Detective Comics #1 from 1937, courtesy of none other than Schuster and Siegel, the same guys who created Superman. And I really enjoyed his narration here, complaining about how John only speaks in, quote, corny as a comic book, in quote, phrasings, looking exactly like some TV detective, and how annoyed he is by his general corniness, but that he's also only one of the only honest cops on the force, along with Jim Gordon. And so, as a private investigator, he's riding shotgun with John. They're teaming up on this investigation into the kidnapping of the son of a prominent financier. Acting on one of John's vague hunches that are never wrong, they find the boy to church, tied up, being prepared for sacrifice by a cult. They also find the Dark Knight himself. Another great pinup style shot here from Cooke as we walk in on Batman beating on the bad guys. Slam and John join the fray, but during the fight, a fire breaks out, and this renders John utterly powerless, right? Paralyzed until Slam eventually extinguishes it. But the boy is about to be sacrificed and knifed by the cult leader as John is kind of out for the count. But Batman ropes him around the neck, and Slam's narration over this part is pitch perfect, talking about what happens next. Quote, "Now you know me. I've seen my share of hard candy. I was a jarhead in the Pacific. There was even a time I collected for the juice man to make ends meet. But the bad guy, he made my blood run cold. The look on his face and the sounds that came out from the creep underneath him. It's the sound of wrist breaking that finally does it. The remaining freaks run blubbering into the shadows." I adore Cooke's Batman in New Frontier. He's an amalgam of all the great early noir elements of the character. He's got such a weathered, gritty sense of seen it all experience. This is the only time we see him in action in this issue. We do run into Bruce Wayne later, but it's a fantastic snapshot nonetheless. Afterward, when Batman frees the tied up boy from his bonds, the child is absolutely terrified at the sight of him, and it's Slam Bradley who has to calm him down. So Slam helps John recover from his pyro-induced anxiety attack, and it's from this incident and John's reaction to the fire and all that that later on in the series, Batman and Darwyn Cooke really later give us one of the best shit-talking scenes of all time from The Dark Knight. He visits John Jones in his apartment. They're talking about the case and everything going on. And as he leaves in his tentative sort of trust, but not without this harrowing warning to John regarding his one fatal weakness.
But my instincts tell me you're to be trusted. Make no mistake, though. I have a $70,000 sliver of radioactive meteor to stop the one from Metropolis. With you, all I need is a penny for a book of matches.
All right, let's close this thing out. Moving on to Chapter 5, Fun City. We're in Vegas, where Ted Wildcat Grant is fighting Cassius Clay, a.k.a. Muhammad Ali. In attendance, we have Bruce Wayne, Lois Lane. Ted's fiancée is Selena Kyle. Oliver Queen, Kyle Ace Morgan, and Hal Jordan are all there in attendance, in kind of two different groups. It's in these conversations, though, that we learn more about these characters and their personal beliefs and what's going on in the superhero community at large. As far as the fight, Grant is losing badly, but Ted goes with Plan B, and comes out of the corner after getting knocked down pretty good. Comes out of the corner, charging Cassius Clay like a madman. Connects with a wild punch and is able to stay champion. We get a glorious shot of him in victory here. Another one of those magnificent stop you in your tracks pages from Cooke that populate this book so heavily. After the match, we're at the Utopia Casino. Hal Jordan and Ace are recalling their time in Korea to two adoring ladies in the lounge. Oliver Queen, Lois, and Bruce are talking about seeing former Green Lantern Alan Scott at Ted's boxing match, but saying that he ducked out early so as not to ruin his night and his publicity. So kind of implying that he and some of the other members of the Justice Society are now social and, American pariahs, really. There's an interesting little conversation here that shows us kind of how both Superman and Lois Lane view the world, and that they're a little too self-righteous and short-sighted. Lois even goes as far to call Alan Scott and the others bad Americans, and Bruce Wayne, in a smart-ass rebuttal, remarks, quote, "Straight from the Superman's mouth to Lois Lane's typewriter." That's an intriguing little peek at these characters, especially given our confrontation between Superman and Wonder Woman earlier in the issue. Now, for my other favorite sequence from this book from Cooke, we're back in Barry Allen's place in Central City. He gets a phone call from Iris, who's also at Utopia Casino. She had an interview with Ted Grant. Suddenly, the phone call is disrupted. We get the explosive appearance of none other than Captain Cold. He is in Vegas. He notices Iris on the phone. Cold freezes her hand. She passes out. Barry, hearing all this over the phone, Hurley finds his flash ring in the messy apartment, and he's off to Vegas. His narration over this action and these amazing pages works so well for me here, saying, quote, "I wait until I'm clear of the city limits to hit the sound barrier. That's when I learned the hard way a few times. Flying glass and pedestrians don't mix. At this speed, I vibrate my atoms at a frequency that allows pesky things like bugs and telephone poles to pass through my mass. It's like coming purposefully unglued as you're shot from a high caliber rifle. I'm a swarm of atoms rocketing towards the one thing I can't live without." That's just fantastic writing. At the Utopia, Cold and his henchwomen have robbed every one of their valuables. They're about to make their leave via an incoming helicopter, but Flash arrives. He quickly thaws out Iris's frozen hand, and he moves immediately to punch out Cold. Cold sees him just in the nick of time, tells him to stop, and he warns him that he's, taking the precaution of planting 6 cryogenic bombs across the city. They're set to go off in 30 seconds. Flash has no choice. He's got to leave Cold and disable these bombs. And in the meantime, we go back to the VIP room, and we see Lois again being such a square, man, such a wet blanket. She calls Flash a quote federal criminal and says he's no better than Cold. Give me a break, girl. But I do love Ted Grant kind of brushing all that off and smiling and saying that he wishes his buddy Jay was here to see this. That was great. As Flash races throughout the city, he finds all 5 bombs. Eventually figures out that the 6th one is a ruse for Cold to make his escape with. He ties the bombs to a balloon, releases it into the sky, and then he heads for Cold. He's climbing up the Utopia's floors, and he goes out a hotel window as the helicopter's taking off. He runs through the airborne helicopter, disables it, yanks Cold out. They land in a fountain. As they kind of both recover, Cold's ice gun or cold gun malfunctions. It freezes him in solid ice, and the balloon and the cryogenic bombs explode in the atmosphere, and they create this incredible snowfall over Las Vegas, right? And again, it's Flash's narration here that really brings it all home, saying, quote, "And for a few minutes, it's snowing in the desert. The other folks, they can't see me, but I'm there, vibrating just outside of their vision. I'm there with them, and it's something to see." I absolutely love that. Later at the end of our issue, we get Hal and Ace at the Nellis Air Force Base. Ace is showing Hal the B-47 Stratojet prototype that he's going to fly on live television. But he notices that his buddy's Hal's been acting differently, and Hal confesses that things haven't been the same for him since the war and his time recuperating the VA from mental trauma. He's also stressing over his brazen lack of care or concern for his own self and his own life when he speaks about the deadly dangers around a previous test flight he'd done for a jet with a serious design flaw that had killed 8 previous people before him. And it troubles him that he doesn't feel any fear or hesitation at the thought of his own death. So Ace suspects that Hal is punishing himself, and Hal denies that in a great flashback moment here by Cooke. Hal then asks Ace if he ever thinks about the men he killed in the war, and Ace replies that he chooses to believe that those he killed were victims not of his hand or his gun, but of war and circumstance, and that they were honorable soldiers fighting for what they believed in, no different from himself. And so, hearing Ace's words, Hal says, "I guess so," and apologizes for his gloomy behavior. I don't know how I feel about Cooke's storytelling decision here and how he chooses to end the conversation. I feel like we're really starting to mine some emotional diamonds here with Hal, but then it all feels a bit dismissive at the end, like a sweep under the rug, and how Ace sort of tells Hal to shake it off. Now, given there are no answers for trauma and PTSD, and I think Cook's storytelling shoulder shrug here kind of comes from where we were at as a society in the early 2000s, when it feels like combat trauma and PTSD, especially, were really just beginning to be properly acknowledged and dealt with and treated. Regardless, I love the doubt and dread present here in this new frontier, Hal Jordan. For a hero so often cocky and confident, I love seeing him fight with his self-worth and climb this ladder of reconciliation and redemption on his way to becoming Green Lantern. While this book is carried by the Silver Age superstars of Barry Allen's Flash and John Jones's Martian Manhunter, it's without a doubt Hal Jordan's Green Lantern who bats cleanup here and serves as the book's emotional anchor. I love New Frontier issue 2 because it provides us with so many unique moments and both character study and just kick-ass comic book action. Of course, it is a love letter to the golden and silver age of comics and the characters from that era, but it's also a love letter to the American people and a gorgeously illustrated reminder of all that once was and could be again, both good and bad. But I want to let the great Darwyn Cooke have the last word, and I'm going to do so with a passage about the Justice League from the books afterward. I found this especially poignant as Cooke was the age I am now when he wrote it. The world will always have dark corners, and black and white comes in thousands of shades of gray. But here are 7 people, good and true, come what may. They have the power to enslave the world, but work tirelessly to keep it free. They don't succumb to envy or greed or jealousy, and their sense of purpose is driven by an unshakable faith in mankind's basic goodness. They are, in the best sense of the word, childlike. It is the very essence of the term superhero, an imaginative fiction that is better than the real, constructed to help you, in some small way, develop your own youthful imagination and value system. I'm 42 now, and I suppose that I believe the magic of this specific genre is based on the notion that 7 powerful people can work together to make the world a better place. That's all for me this week, as I encourage all of you to take your inner child to the amusement park, feed it candy, let it stay up late. Thank you all for watching. As always, you can catch me on Ink and Insights every Wednesday evening, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with my co-host Eric from 9 Panel Grid, talking our favorite comics of the week from Marvel, DC, Image, and the Indies. Also, every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, I'm talking horror with my homies Verno and Link over on Blood Splatter Chatter, and every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, I am co-hosting Blame Fable and his amazing friends over on One Collection Down's YouTube channel. You can find all these videos and more on updated playlists on my homepage, Dr. Doom's Fan Club. Please make sure you're subscribed to me there and on Instagram for more great comic book content. Thanks again, y'all. See you next week. Station.
But I believe that the times require imagination and courage and perseverance. I'm asking each of you to be pioneers towards that new frontier.